Are you ready to be shocked? Something extraordinary has just happened with the Mississippi River that has scientists scratching their heads in disbelief. It's a discovery so mind-boggling that it's left even the most seasoned experts wondering what on earth is going on. You won't believe what we've uncovered about the mighty Mississippi River. Stay tuned to find out more. The Mississippi River will see record low water levels in 2022, illustrating how climate change is changing huge rivers. Rivers are vital passageways that connect cities, as well as the ecosystems that surround them. When there is a drought, the water level in rivers drops, which makes river navigation more difficult and expensive. The water levels in several of the world's greatest rivers, such as the Rhine in Europe and the Yangtze in China, reached all-time lows in 2022. These rivers include the Rhine and the Yangtze. Midway through the month of October, the Mississippi River at Memphis, Tennessee, dropped to a level where barges were no longer able to float. As a result, the river channels needed to be dredged in addition to receiving special water releases from reservoirs further upstream. Because of the early winter rains, the conditions in the lower Mississippi may be beginning to improve slightly. Nevertheless, as earth scientists at the University of Memphis, we see the drastic drop in water levels that occurred this year as a glimpse into a climate that will change in the future. The use of river barges is an effective method for transporting bulky goods and heavy equipment across extended distances. Some examples of such goods are grain shipments. However, this is only the case when the water is at its typical temperature. Because of climate change, the Mississippi River is seeing more swings between extreme lows and highs, which means that average water conditions are no longer the norm. As a result, river transport is likely to continue to experience increased delays in the foreseeable future. A substantial drop in volume. Precipitation levels that are much lower than average typically herald the beginning of a drought. There are a variety of other aspects that contribute to the severity of droughts in a place, such as the temperature, the wind, the cloudiness, and the kind of soil. The ability of soil to store water from precipitation that occurred in earlier months enables it to provide flow to rivers, which in turn delays the beginning of reductions further downstream. In Memphis, the warm, dry weather that began in the latter half of June 2022 persisted throughout the early weeks of autumn. Because of the higher temperatures, evaporation rates increased, which led to a drop in soil moisture and ultimately led to a flash drought, which formed within a matter of weeks. The watershed of the Mississippi River drains an area that is more than 40% the size of the continental United States and encompasses 1.2 million square miles. This results in a tremendous flow, which is particularly noticeable on the lower Mississippi River, as an increasing number of tributaries discharge into it. When water levels are average, the amount of water that flows by Memphis each second is greater than 14,000 cubic meters or 500,000 cubic feet. That would be enough people in under a minute to completely fill up the Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena, California. Because water must travel great distances to reach the region, fluctuations in the amount of precipitation that falls in the lower Mississippi might cause a delay in the response time of the stream flow. However, as a result of the current flash drought, the water level in the river dropped significantly from August through October, and it reached a new all-time low on October 20, 2022 in Memphis. Over the course of 11 weeks, the river went down by 20 feet. Variations in the occurrence of flash droughts. A long-term trend has been seen over the previous century, in which the annual minimum water levels on the lower Mississippi River have decreased. The flash drought that happened in 2022 was a major part of this long-term trend. In other words, annual lows are falling to lower and lower levels. These extremely low readings can be attributed to two basic factors. Secondly, beginning in the 1930s, flood control measures such as the building of locks, dams, and levees have led to the impounding of an increased portion of the river's flow upstream and a reduction in the amount of fluctuation in the river's flow. Because of this, accidentally, low water episodes have become significantly more severe. Second, the places that were impacted by the flash drought of 2022 were distinct from those that were impacted by earlier extreme low water occurrences. In years gone by, areas of the Missouri and Ohio Rivers tributaries, from which water ultimately flows into the Mississippi, were the epicenters of intensely hot and dry flash droughts. This resulted in a decrease in the amount of water that reached the lower Mississippi River. Normal soil moisture levels were observed in the tributaries in 2022. Nevertheless, a sudden drought emerged in the central U.S. over the Mississippi River itself, leading to an increase in evaporation and a decrease in the water levels of the lower Mississippi River. The typical way of thinking about hydrologic drought is challenged by the idea that the main stem of a big river like the Mississippi might experience low water, even when its major tributaries are running at normal levels. Because high temperatures boost evaporation and make the soil more thirsty, the historic event that took place in the Mississippi River Basin this year is evidence that climate change is affecting big rivers. Barge backups. The Mississippi River is an important canal that allows the grain to be transported by barge from agricultural states to both domestic and international markets. When it comes to modes of transportation for commercial goods, barges are both the most affordable and environmentally friendly alternative. The amount of dry cargo that may be carried by a single hopper barge is equivalent to that of 16 rail cars or 70 vehicles. The Mississippi River Basin is the primary shipping route for approximately 92% of all agricultural exports from the U.S., including corn, wheat, and soybeans. Because of the low water levels, there are fewer sections of the river that are navigable and deep enough for barges. Because of the closing of sections of the Mississippi River on October 7, 2022, there was a traffic jam of more than 2,000 barges at various sites along the river. The low water levels caused disruptions in both the north and the south shipping operations. When harvest time rolls around, there is a higher demand for barge transportation, which drives up shipping costs. The supply and demand dynamics of the market, the size of the existing barge fleet, and various other factors can all have a substantial impact on barge rates. The high increase in the weekly cost of moving grain by barge can be attributed to navigation limits placed on the Mississippi River as a result of low water levels. The typical cost of transporting goods by barge jumped from approximately $11 to $12 per ton during the summer of 2022 to more than $71 per ton during the month of October 2022. During the month of November, it dropped to an average of $27.25 per ton, which is still significantly higher than the normal rate. Making preparations for additional water lows. Higher air temperatures have the ability to cause drought by increasing the amount of water that is lost to evaporation, and they also have the capacity to cause excessive rainfall by holding more water. The prehistoric river records in North America indicate that water temperatures existed 1,000 years ago, which resulted in more variable precipitation patterns, including significant droughts punctuated by extreme floods. These conditions are comparable to those that are currently occurring on the lower Mississippi. In the Mississippi River Valley, the yearly transitions from extremely dry to extremely rainy conditions have become increasingly common over the course of the past century. As a result of climate change, we anticipate that this pattern will persist even while average global temperatures continue to climb. Businesses that ship grain will look at alternative shipping methods, and it is possible that the river will require repeated dredging in order to remain navigable. This will result in an increase in the cost of shipping, which will ultimately be passed on to customers. In addition, because of the river's low water levels, salt water can make its way inland from the Gulf of Mexico, which has the potential to contaminate the region's sources of drinking water. In order to stop this from happening, the Army Corps of Engineers is constructing an underwater levee. This will prevent salt water, which is denser and sinks lower than fresh water because of its lower specific gravity. The necessity to reduce flooding along the Mississippi was a driving force behind river engineering projects during the 20th century. In the future, flood prevention will still be very important, but there will also be an increased potential for events with low water levels. Because the U.S. is about to enter a new period marked by extremes in hydrologic conditions, we feel it is essential to gain an understanding of how watersheds and large rivers react to climate change. This will allow businesses and communities to better plan for the future. It's acts of God, they say, as the Mississippi River dwindles and people start praying for rain. The size of Old Man River is decreasing. The barges are becoming stuck on the shore. The nation's shipping industry is anxious about the situation, yet you wouldn't know that from Tony DeMarco's porch, which overlooks the Mississippi, which isn't exactly a huge river. It's only a short walk from the hustle and bustle of the city, yet it feels like you're on the other side of the planet when you're there. He lives on the parish boundary between Orleans and Jefferson, on the riverside of the levee. From his vantage point, the water level is significantly lower than it would normally be, exposing sand and driftwood along the riverbanks. Despite this, life continues at its normal pace. Peaceful was how 72-year-old DeMarco described his neighborhood, which is located along a narrow strip of land known as the Batture that is situated between the levee and the river. There's nothing but rabbits, possums, and squirrels, the man said. Other people all around the country who are worried about the river can't afford to have such a positive outlook. The most recent weeks have served as a timely reminder of how critically dependent the nation is on rainfall and the locations to which it drains. Even with all of the technological advancements that have taken place over the past few decades, the Mississippi River at dangerously low levels may still cause havoc. It has put the supply chain as well as the drinking water supplies at jeopardy. It has been determined that emergency dredging operations are necessary, as well as the construction of an underwater levee. It is possible that the situation may not dramatically improve anytime soon for the waterway that drains 41% of the contiguous United States and carries 60% of the country's grain exports as a result of the ongoing drought that has been affecting much of the country. Many people are watching with trepidation. At this point, you're waiting on acts of God, said Micah Cormier, spokesperson for the Port of South Louisiana, whose facilities upriver from New Orleans handle 100 million tons of grain annually, intended for 90 different nations. At this point, it's acts of God that you're waiting on. Right now, all eyes are focused on the United States of America. The availability of barges and the amount of cargo that vessels can transport has been impacted, according to the local officials, although the ports themselves have not yet noticed any significant effects. In addition, a number of cruises that normally take place along the river have been canceled. Yet, the situation is becoming increasingly dire further north. The Tennessee Valley Authority reported last week that the level of the river at Cairo, Illinois, which is located where the Ohio River meets the Mississippi, was approaching its lowest level since 1901. As a result, plans were made to release water from 2 dams in the area. Pictures taken in the Memphis area and other parts of the country show the river in a startlingly dry state. In the state of Missouri, vacationers were able to access the island landmark known as Tower Rock by walking on ground that is ordinarily submerged by the Mississippi River. A shipwreck that had been submerged for more than a century was exposed when the water level in Baton Rouge dropped to an appropriate level. Although the Harvey Lock in the New Orleans area has been closed due to low water levels, vessels are still able to navigate their way to the nearby Algiers Lock, which has not been affected by the closure. There have been at least 30 vessels that have been aground, according to the Coast Guard, and the Army Corps of Engineers has stated that they have deployed 5 dredging operations in the Memphis and St. Louis areas. The Coast Guard issues a warning that additional urgent dredging may require the closure of certain stretches of the river. Keeping a tight eye on that right now. The river is significantly deeper in South Louisiana due to a combination of naturally occurring factors and dredging, which is one of the reasons why the effects are less noticeable here, yet it is still a peculiar sight to see. With the assistance of a walking stick, Doug Nichols scrambled down the rocky banks at the Fly at Audubon Park in order to get closer to the river. Due to the river's low level, a sandbar was exposed, and the wind carried with it the musty odor of the moist land. Nichols, a lawyer, stated that he was interested in the topic since he had been reading numerous stories on it. The river's progression helps tell the story in several ways. By noon on Friday, the reading at the Carrollton Gauge in New Orleans was 2.2 feet, and it is anticipated to fall even farther. Although it is difficult to make comparisons outside of the modern age due to the significant changes in the river's path, the lowest level ever recorded was 1.6 feet in 1872. That does not imply that the water depth in the river at Carrollton is 2.2 feet. The stage is measured in relation to the water level in the Gulf of Mexico. The actual depth of the river in the New Orleans area is substantially deeper, reaching as low as 190 feet near Algiers, according to a spokesman with the Corps of Engineers named Ricky Boyette. Even though levees protect the city to a height of more than 20 feet above sea level, the Corps of Engineers engages in what is known as a flood fight when the river reaches 11 feet above sea level at Carrollton. When the flow of the river surpasses 1.25 million cubic feet per second at the Carrollton gauge, the Bonnet Carré spillway is activated. This helps to put the situation into better perspective. On Friday, the flow was approximately 160,000 cubic feet per second, which is approximately 13% of the trigger. According to early readings, Memphis, which is located further to the north, established a new record low for the modern era last week. The lack of rain is the simplest explanation for why it is so low. The country as a whole is experiencing drought conditions, which is depriving the river of the runoff that would normally flow within its banks. According to Jeff Grashel of the National Weather Service, the water levels in the lower end of the river are lower than they have been since 2012, while farther north they have approached the levels they had in 1988. Both of those years were characterized by protracted spells of drought. According to him, it may be several weeks before the levels begin to recover to some degree of normalcy. It's typical for the river levels to be lower during this time of year, but he added to expect them to rise again as November progresses and the weather changes. There are no long-range forecasts that are giving us any occasions for rainfall that will generate runoff to help and alleviate low water situations right now, he added. There is no indication that this will change in the foreseeable future. It goes without saying that everyone is keeping a very careful eye on that. He noted that in order for the impacts to be felt further south, it would be necessary for rain to fall in the higher part of the river valley, such as in Illinois. Except for the precipitation that falls directly into the Mississippi, the rain that falls into the southern part of Louisiana does not drain into the river. They said they couldn't live over there. Drinking water contamination is a significant issue that needs to be addressed in South Louisiana. The river serves as the primary source of water for the New Orleans metropolitan region, but when the Mississippi River is at such a low level, salt water can make its way upstream from the Gulf of Mexico. The inability of municipal or parish water treatment facilities to desalinate water prompted the Corps of Engineers to intervene in an effort to reduce the amount of salt water that had formed a wedge in the river. It does this by constructing a sill out of the sediment, which is essentially an underwater levee. This sill is placed in the river so that it blocks the flow of the salt water, which is at the river's bottom because it is denser. This prevents the salt water from moving upwards. 1988, 1999, and 2012 all saw the Corps engaged in a work of a comparable nature. It was anticipated by Boyette that the construction of the sill along the riverbed close to Myrtle Grove would be finished on Friday at a height of 35 feet. Further safety measures have been implemented in the parts of Plaquemines Parish that lie below the sill. 2 filters were going to be brought in to remove the salt from the drinking water on their way in. According to Parish President Kirk Lapine, the first 2 were rerouted due to demands linked to Hurricane Ian in Florida, but one has since arrived in Plaquemines and was being set up there. The second was already in transit. Dialysis patients and those who try to limit their sodium intake have been given a warning for the region extending from the Empire Bridge to Venice. But while some are worried, DeMarco is just going with the flow from his house on the Batture, where he's lived for close to 35 years at this point. Residents like DeMarco are afforded a rare front row view of the river's rise and fall as a result of the camp-style cottages that are positioned there. These houses date back to an earlier era and have been grandfathered in. Even though the water has risen within a couple feet of his house on occasion when the river has been particularly high, he has never been flooded. It is in no way even close to being that currently. As DeMarco, who makes his living in real estate, taking in the view of the river's bend, He commented on the fact that after having lived here, he couldn't live over there with the neighbors next to me. Thank you for joining us. We hope you found this information as fascinating as we did. Keep an eye out for more exciting discoveries in the future as we continue to delve deeper into the mysteries of our natural world. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with our latest videos. Thank you for watching.